addict, unhealthy, broke, that's where you start. You start right fucking there. For any creator that wants to create anything, you start with the honesty of where you are. That's the most liberating thing. My goal with my life is to be as honest with myself and others as to exactly where I am on my spiritual and personal evolution, because that's what fucking people deserve, and so do I.
I think it's so important for those who have walked through the fire to share that.
Healing happens in community. It doesn't happen alone. The more secretive I'm being about my shit to myself or others, it holds me hostage. It dampens my potential. Well, I can't be vulnerable this time because last time so-and-so did this. We feed ourselves these bullshit stories and we wonder why it's so hard for us to open up and just to be authentically us. It's because this is part of the conditioning that we're taking off. So the very first time that we practice compassion, vulnerability, there's going to be a delta of learning that we have to be courageous enough to face. Before we can squat 500 pounds, you have to start with the bar. If I was to say it's one thing that helps us as men, is to share all of our secrets with the people that we love, because they're going to love us anyways. Because then they're accessing our full heart and our full self that they've been longing for anyways.
I didn't want to feel like a fraud, because even though everybody thinks I got it figured out, I don't. I've done some things that I've done really well. I've had some good fortune. I've had some bad fortune.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting because I think a lot of people, it's just a projection. And it's like, I think intuitively I've just known that. I'm like, I know you think that I've got it figured out. There are some things that I do that are intuitive, that work. And I'm in this old playbook, like I was telling you. It's like so many of this, like this real estate that just burns cash versus cash flowing. So there's this whole season that I've been in. It's been over a year, and it really came into my awareness probably in the spring when I had Justin Donald on the podcast, and just woke me up like, oh, this is an old playbook.
Like from childhood?
No, it's like this playbook worked for a while, but it's time for me to turn the page. I need to go a different direction. And so I feel like really trying to stay in, like to feel what I'm meant to feel right now. And that's been probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
I would say through most of the summer, I was numbing to not feel that. Pretty much, as we like to say on the golf course, I was on all the rides. I was on some mushrooms, a little bit of cannabis, not really drinking, nicotine, feel free.
All at once?
Just throughout the day. There's just keeping the ride going.
Yeah.
Start with a little feel free in the morning, have a little mushroom, have a little of this, maybe have a little cannabis. But it was a constant state of changing how I felt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it got to the point where later in the summer, if I could have night sweats, which I know that's a big indication that something's not right.
Yeah.
I, for so long, have taken such good care of myself that to have night sweats, it's like, bro, like you're off the rails right now.
For sure. Ooh.
And I didn't want to turn it around just then because I was functioning fine. I was having fun playing golf and hanging out and doing all those things. And I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to look at myself in the mirror. And I got back here mid-August and I just had this awakening, like, dude, if you don't like stop now, like you're just gonna do this. Is this gonna be your thing?
Yeah.
For the next year, 5 years, whatever. Like if you can't stop this, like is this who you want to be? Is this like, who are you without all these things?
Oh, dude, I literally just talked about that yesterday with my team. We're talking about identity. Who are you without the thing that you think you need that's actually your master, to quote our buddy Paul Chek? anything that you need to do as your master?
Oh, yeah.
Who are you without the thing that you're making your master? That's a potent, hit hard question.
Fuck.
Who are you without the thing that you're making your master? What is your identity without the thing that's kind of almost buttressing you to be something that you really want to be, but it's a pseudo identity. It's not a real thing. It's not actually who you are. It's just this thing you're doing to propagate a false self in a way.
Yeah.
Fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But we all fall into it.
Yes.
I have old shit come up too. I mean, like all kinds of stuff around porn and money and women and being a father and how do I handle it all. I think it's what most people experience, but our society is constructed in a way where they can check out any fucking time they want. But then once we go to the bottom of that, there's peace on the other side.
Yeah.
There's that ease and peace and flow without all the worries that we're constructing for ourselves to keep it propagating in a way.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
What I came to realize, and rather than use the again, an old playbook and just quit everything at once, I just slowly cycled off, like almost like per week, just started getting rid of this, then that. And then finally caffeine was the last frontier, like mid-September when I had Daniel and Sean on from Update. And that's when I stopped drinking coffee. And I just realized, I like this version of me. I like this version better.
The non-caffeinated version?
The non-dependent version.
Okay.
Non-addicted version.
Yeah.
To substances. I'm sure there's other addictions that I was feeding at the time. But that's something I know that you've talked about a lot is addiction and just relationship to that. And it's been something for me that I know I have a full-on personality for certain things. Like I told you, I'll drink 3 or 4 of these updates in a day. I feel like this, again, when I was early 2000s, I quit drinking. Was I an alcoholic? I don't think so, but I knew that it just wasn't a good thing for me. And so, I was dealing with depression at the time, and it was like, okay, I need to start exercising and do away with some of this stuff. So I've had a bit of a kind of confrontation with it, or at least an awareness of it back then. And I feel like this last version was me really having to sit with, like, what are you trying to escape? Like, what are you trying not to feel? And being able to change my state with whatever the substance is was a way for me to not have to feel what I'm meant to feel. And I feel like I started to feel into some of that stuff over the fall. I feel like recently I've checked out a little bit again. And so I feel like you coming on today is just like almost like to pull me back into the feels of like what I'm meant to do. Yeah. So thank you for being here.
Oh, dude, thanks. Thanks for having me. I love your space, by the way.
Thank you.
This is a great space to do work in. You're in nature. It's quiet. You're surrounded by rocks and earth and trees and silence. It's pretty amazing, man. Yeah, I can relate to what you're talking about because, Gabor Mate, which I'm sure you've heard of his work quite a bit. He says the opposite of addiction is connection. Mm-hmm. It's connection to self or others. So when we really want to, I hate the word even beat addiction because then that makes us at war with addiction. If we want to transcend addiction, how do we do that? Well, we connect to ourselves or others. But then the fear that comes with that, like, oh my God, will I be seen? Will I be liked? Will I be loved? Am I worthy of this connection point? I think that's real for all people, yet our society isn't conducive to having those conversations because society isn't the Unlearned podcast.
Yeah.
And I think the beauty of the space that you hold, even when you share your stuff publicly, is that that's the gift that you're bringing. Like I wore this shirt on purpose today. Leaders hold lanterns.
Yeah.
Because when you and I, this is what we're doing in podcasting. It's this humble, conscious search for the truth in ourselves and with others. And so it's so easy to be on a pulpit or be a podcast host and be like, well, I'm just shining light, brother. I'm just shining light on everyone else. But when we do that, when I just shine light on everybody else, the space between the light I'm holding and me stays dark. I never get illuminated because I'm in fear of being illuminated. So I'm just spending my life in spiritual narcissism, shining light on other people.
Yeah.
So I love this because, and it actually came through on a podcast once because I'm like, we just need to hold lanterns. Enough with this shining light on everybody. Like, let's shine light on us too.
Is that your shirt?
This is my branding. Yeah. So the Wellness and Wisdom podcast logo, and then leaders hold lanterns, because that's what it's all about, dude.
Hell yeah.
The greatest podcasts in the world, the greatest speakers in the world aren't teaching from a pulpit. They're just sharing from their heart and sharing the lessons out loud in public to which they've learned. And I think that's the greatest jumping off point for you and I to come together again, because gosh, man, everybody deals with this.
Yeah.
Yet it's the dragon in the closet that by keeping it dark, it still gets to eat. And it's always doing push-ups in the corner. Any addiction like freaking kratom or alcohol or caffeine or any of these things, they just become fed by our resistance to just be without them. And so they feed off of that resistance. So yeah, man, addiction takes many forms. And I think what it's really wanting is for us to be connected to us and other people again. That's really what it is. Healing happens in community. Healing happens with people. It doesn't happen alone. When you're at a Joe Dispenza workshop and you go to your hotel room and all of a sudden you're healed. That's not how it works. Yeah. It happens when you're sitting with men or when women are sitting in community and they have the courage to share, because that very courage is the thing that they haven't been practicing alone. I think that's the jumping off point for everything, for all addictions. There's a biological neurochemical aspect too. Some people have proclivities towards addictions.
And I'm curious what the numbers bear out, because I think for so long, I'll just speak for myself, I've been led to believe that it's a great number is a chemical thing. And I think, and again, N equals 1, so it's just me. Yeah. My experience, I don't think it's chemical. I think I have some propensity towards going all in on things.
Yep.
And so that stuff could fall into that. But I feel like when I get deep into dependency, it is something I am not wanting to feel about myself. And that is my way to just disconnect, disassociate from what I'm being asked to feel.
Yeah. Well, if we weren't ever taught how to feel it by model, so if our family didn't teach us how to do it, one of the biggest things that a mom and dad can ever do is learn how to repair ruptures in front of their children. So if we didn't have that, and I don't know if you had that or not, I didn't have that. My dad left when I was 2 months old. My mom was dealing with a manic bipolar issue for her whole life. She still is. So I didn't really ever have that example that could imprint in my unconscious as a way of being so that I could just naturally repair things. It wasn't there. So I've had to learn and unlearn a lot of things in my life when it comes to real communication with my woman. That's been the ultimate game changer, dude. Let's be real.
Yes.
Relationships with women are the game changer. Yeah. They make everything make sense. But in order for it to make sense, I have to go through all of this feminine energy and mystery that doesn't make sense to me at times.
Yeah.
Because they're so mysterious. I mean, the feminine is like the ultimate teacher, even the feminine in myself. And so that's why, in our logo, there's the upside down triangle, and that's water. So I put that in our logo because that's the very thing that I think many men must master in this world, is this acknowledgement that we have feminine energy and it's okay. It's actually really fucking powerful to share it and to be in it and to have the switching capacity to go in it and out of it and all the things. So I think it's this full acceptance of self and the ability to share who we really are with someone else that feeds addiction. I think that's what it's all about. If you look at most addicts, they were abused, they went through trauma, they have something in their life that has just carved a wound in their psyche. And if they have the epigenetics for that to be signaled on, like for example, 3-4 generations have been alcoholics, well, then the cards are already stacked against them. The cards can be redealt, but the cards are stacked against them from the jump, from birth. And then if in utero, their mom was dealing with stress and trauma, now that child's coming out with hypervigilance. And if you look at generational work, like Mark Wolyn's work, it didn't start with you. And you think about how many generational things are imprinted into the baby. The bigger the life you want, I think the bigger the challenge we choose when we come into the world. I mean, that's definitely been my case. And I'm like a white dude from East County, San Diego. Okay. It's way harder for a lot of other people, way harder. But I think we choose that. And I think this path of healing addiction is less about fighting it and more about being at peace with why the addiction's there in the first place.
So when you say the bigger kind of life you want, the harder, like, and is that in that like new levels, new devils, as you start to expand, like you're at a new layer of peeling back the onion, and it's like, okay, so now you're digging deeper into the generational trauma, into whatever maybe digging, like what do you mean by that?
Well, when you peel an onion, you're going to cry. Like every layer you peel, there's going to be more tears. And that's just, I think, how it was designed. So what I'm saying is that the bigger the dream, whether it's like a financial dream or, with my business, like I want to reach 10 million people a year. That's my goal. That's my next benchmark. 10 years ago, it was to reach 1 million people a year. And we're way past that. So it's like every single time I reassess with my soul and I figure out, well, what do I really want to do from humble service? Not from my ego, not just pumping myself up. So it's like the Josh show and look how cool I am. But when I set the next benchmark and I really want to be of service, I'm going to meet parts of myself that are holding me back from me having that or from me being that. So what I mean is like the bigger the expansion, the crunchier the contraction. And I learned this from Kelly Brogan. And I just love it. She talks about it as the healing spiral. So with the healing spiral, there's this massive expansion and then a big contraction. And the more we expand, like for example, the more money you make or the more real estate that you have or the more love you have with your wife or your husband or whatever it is, the more juiciness that you have, the more gravitas and proof that you're living the life that you want when you have a big dream. I just think naturally, if you look at science, everything's an exact opposite of one another. Like we were chatting about sodium and potassium. So the sodium and potassium are mirrors for each other. If there's too much sodium or too much potassium, the system goes awry. So there's always this balance wanting to happen. So if you look at science and spirituality, how could it not be possible that if you strive for something super huge that you've never had before, that there would be eventually an exact contraction to match the expansion that you've created? It's just inevitable, right? You go for something really big and then God universe is going to bring you a contraction to test your resolve on how you achieved it, how you've embodied it. And I think that's the work. That's why you're around some people. Have you ever been around somebody and you're just like, wow, I really love their being. I love their presence. You can just feel their success. You don't have to know how much money they have in the bank or how many books they've put on the Wall Street best-selling list. It doesn't matter. You can just sense it around them. And I think it's because they've been through so many cycles of contractions and expansions that we can just feel that from them on some level. We can just sense their work that they've done. Many spiritual masters are like that. So I think it's a testament to that.
Would you say the season of you, this expansion of buying land, building a home, like that is this big expansion, then I know it just created a lot of stress for you as well.
Contractors are stressful, dude.
Yeah. So would that be an example of something you've gone through recently where you felt that kind of cycle? Or
like 5 years ago, I got my ass kicked so hard in an ayahuasca journey because I was still addicted to pornography at that time, that I saw exactly how my life was going to unfold if I continued down that route. And so I just took it upon myself to create exactly what I knew was possible, which is having land and building my pod studio and having 2 beautiful children who I love and being in a great relationship where we can share with each other without fear. And I can create a space for her where she can share and I can express all the things I want to express, which keep me out of the dark closet of addiction. What I'm saying is like, man, doing all of those things I just shared has not been easy. And it's called forth a big part of Josh for me to actually own it and hold it with my 2 hands. And so with what I was sharing earlier about the reciprocity, both spiritually and scientific, like the challenges have come even more the bigger that I've played the game. Like the bigger I play the game, the crunchier the challenges are. And I used to resist that. And I've heard all kinds of people talk about this. I remember Joe Rogan was even saying this on his podcast once. He was like, You guys think this is easy? You think that once you get to a certain point that it's going to be a deep breath and that you can relax? No, the challenges keep coming. The challenges are just harder. You just become stronger enough to deal with them. And then we fall into these traps like your buddy that wants, instead of 100 million, he wants to be a billionaire, like you were telling me about.
Yeah.
Well, newsflash, when he gets to 1 billion, he's still going to be himself.
Yes. Yes.
Just because we have certain zeros in the bank account or a house or whatever, these are all outward things. What I was talking about earlier, where you can feel somebody's nervous system, you can just feel like empowered in their presence. There's certain people like that. Like Mark Groves is one of them.
Yeah.
Where when I'm around them, I'm just like, well, I really like the person I am when I'm around this person. Because they remind us about what it's like to have a nervous system that's so powerful and so trustable. And I'll tell you that Mark and all these guys have been through many fucking heroes' journeys, many contractions and expansions. Yeah.
I love that. Tell me this. Prior to 5 years ago, would you say it was really challenging to be truly vulnerable in front of Carrie, in the sense that, like, if you had something on your heart that you wanted to share, that, all right, I'll just get to it. This is what I'm struggling with, is that vulnerability. I can talk about things on here and be vulnerable, right? I can share things that other people maybe wouldn't share. I try to be discerning to keep, some sanctity around the family and my kids in particular.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't necessarily pertain to them, then I'm going to talk about it. As you said, like, sharing, on the one hand, sharing just allows me to, like, release it and not have it be in that darkness.
Yeah.
And also lets other people know, like, we're all a little bit fucked up. And this is like my version of fucked up. And this is how I'm working through it. And this is where I'm still struggling. Like, just trying to be like you, like, just real about it. That said, for me to, like, open up that side of me to Peyton, where it challenges some notions of what it means to be a provider. Obviously, very kind of almost like ingrained part of being, I think, a man. And really, it kind of centers around that mostly. It's like my ability to provide. And I think people would say, are you crazy, dude? Like, look at kind of what you've been able to provide.
Look at your life.
Right.
Right.
And it's almost like what you're talking about with Rogan. It's like, and where is that balance of continuing to grow in different areas of my life, financial piece being one of them. And I'm feeling this contraction and it doesn't feel good. And so there's a withholding at times of how I'm feeling around that. And so with me not sharing with her, I don't need to share all the details, but sharing what's on my heart, that I'm concerned, or that I feel like a piece of shit, or that I made some bad decisions, or maybe I had some bad luck. Whatever the story is, it's still a very tender spot for me to open up the kimono and say, hey, I'm not perfect at this. And not that I think I'm perfect at anything, but it's like there's some version of me that has shame around that. Now, that leads to lack of connection in other ways too, because I'm closed off. I'm not feeling my self-love because I feel like I'm a piece of shit. And so I don't feel like I'm worthy of her love, even when she's trying desperately to give it to me.
Even when you're married and you have children, decades of love.
Yeah. And it's, I feel that disconnection, and it's, I feel like it's anchored around this stuff. So this is a long way to say, did you have some version of this with Carrie? And then if so, like, what opened that up for you?
Wow. So many things. I mean, we're all looking for the one thing. Can I just say a blanket statement? Yeah. We're all looking for the one thing that's going to give us peace. Aren't we? I feel on some level, everybody's like, even in marketing, tell me the 5 ways you can have peace today. Or look at all the books that are out there that are teaching people how to love and accept themselves and have peace. And the paradox is that it's never one thing. Like somebody, like I'm sure we go on podcasts and somebody will say, what's the one thing that'll get you the one thing?
Oh yeah.
And I'm almost like, well, the one thing is that it's not one thing.
I like that.
Like, that's the one thing. So the one thing for me has been this consistent recapitulation and re-understanding of all the conditioning that I've received my whole life. This is why I love the name of your pod. It's fucking epic, really, because if we're unlearning, well, what's the point of us unlearning so we can learn new things? The point is that the stuff we've learned is causing or has caused us so much suffering that eventually the soul is like waving the white flag and saying, okay, what else do we need to learn?
Yeah.
And a prayer that I've said that I learned in 2019 when I got my ass kicked in ayahuasca, which I think we talked about on your other pod, so people can watch that episode.
Mm-hmm.
But the prayer is very sacred, very simple, really humble. I put both my hands on my heart. It could be in the sauna space. It could be out in nature, wherever you are, it doesn't matter. And I just close my eyes and I just take a deep breath through my nose. God, what is it that I most need to learn? And how can I be most humble to learn it? God, what is it that I most need to learn? And how can I be most humble to learn it? And I just say that over and over and over and over again with a humble heart, with a curious, not demonstrative energy, like a real, like, God, I'm open. I'm here. What is it that I most need to learn? Just out of curiosity. I remember in the autobiography of a yogi, Paramahansa Yogananda would say a prayer similar to that. He did it for like 2 weeks. He just sat and said a prayer asking God what he needed to learn. And eventually the message will drop in, but here's the kicker. It may not be the thing we want. The one thing is that there isn't one thing, and the thing that we're praying for clarity on may not be the thing that we want to hear. Mm-hmm. It might be a whisper. It might be a sledgehammer. It might be like, you got to get out of this relationship because this person's toxic and you're enabling it. Or you really need to focus on your biomarkers because your A1C is off the charts and your LDL is destroyed. Or, you're really treating your children like your father treated you. Or fill in the blank, right? And I think we can become so intellectualized and so head busy in our modern world, which is maybe another section of our pod. That's actually how it was designed. The construct of the matrix and modernity is to monetize people's pain and weaponize compassion and empathy. That's what I believe. Oof. But the way that we get there is through just constantly being humble in our prayer. And you don't have to be Christian or Jewish. You have to believe, actually. You have to have faith that there is something that created you. You have to believe in a creator of some sort. It doesn't have to be a bearded dude in the sky or, Allah or anyone, but it has to be this recognition that we are here, therefore we've been created. And there's so much beauty in that. There's so much it brings up emotion to me even just to feel that. It's like, we're here, man. Our mother loved us so much. We got birth through her womb. How amazing is that?
We're here.
So with all of that as a backdrop, can I just be humble enough to ask God for direction, whatever God means to anyone, and do it enough with such humility in my heart that eventually the answer is going to drop in? Go talk to that person. The Alchemist is a crazy, wonderful book for this. If anybody hasn't read The Alchemist.
It's been a minute, yeah.
So just continue to ask with humility in your heart and curiosity in your heart, what is the thing that I most need to learn? How can I be most humble to learn it? And don't be surprised when universe God gives you experiences that will humble you, because that's actually the whole gift. I'm not here to wax poetic or be narcissistic about this.
Yeah, wax away though.
Or bypass it.
Yeah.
Because many times, the very thing that we're praying for, it comes to us through this vehicle of pain. And in that moment, there's this inflection point where we've either developed the spiritual maturity to know that our courage can get us through it and get to the lesson, or we backpedal and we wait for the next round of pain. And it's just like the pain teacher comes over and over again until the lesson is learned. I think that's really the one thing.
I've been in that dance. I feel like getting kind of close, and it's so interesting that it came to me. I believe it came to me what the one thing is for me.
What is it?
And I got some whispers of it last night. And you're bringing a little more like a sledgehammer to it, subtly. Dude, it's prayer. It's fucking prayer. Those two words probably shouldn't go together, but for our purposes, they're going to.
It's
because
a nice emphasis word.
It's been there. And it's like, I had my first Aya experience in earlier this year, and it came up there through the facilitation, through people's experience, and there was a resonance there. It's like, oh, that's something I haven't done. And so in my meditations, I would have some starts to that, but it's still more of a meditation than a prayer. And I don't know if I just feel like for me, there was a little nuance around that. It may be the same thing for others, but for me, it's like, it wasn't quite. And then reading The Mystic Jesus last night, Marianne Williamson's new book, that was coming through big time. And I actually probably attempted or prayed for the first time last night while I was laying in bed. And I woke up this morning and I did it again. And here you are talking about the one thing, which wouldn't have seemed like the one thing, but it's the one thing that opens up to the many things. And then it's whether it's an intuitive thing or whatever the next steps are, it's not that I haven't been humble necessarily. I've been humbled.
Yeah.
I think I've been fairly humble, but there's a different, I feel like there's a different energy to prayer and really surrendering to, I don't know anymore. I thought for so long, I felt that I've had some sort of knowing about what the next thing may be, or, how to carry on. And I feel like I've just been stuck in this loop of like kind of feeling like I'm coming out of it, and then I find myself back in it. And again, I feel like I've been a little bit checked out in a lot of areas, which doesn't feel good. And so I feel like this idea of prayer and opening myself up to that and whatever it wants to be is what I'm being called to right now.
Earlier you said, did you ever deal with struggles with carry and vulnerability? And it was a direct correlation to how much I was opening myself to God through prayer. Because I've had a lot of wounds around Christianity and religion. I think a lot of people have. I don't know if you have those similar
Never
ones.
really went to church, yeah.
Okay, so sometimes...
But I would say a bit of an aversion to it.
All right.
To organize
when
religion.
people are speaking in tongues and pastors are flying huge jets, it's not always the perfect space for us to trust.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been bastardized, right?
Yeah.
So the word of God's been bastardized. But what's really amazing, and I love this phrase, and I may say it imperfectly, but it relates to your question about Carrie and for you with Peyton. It's Isaiah 45:7 in the Bible. And Isaiah 45:7 is, I am the dark and the light. I create good and evil. So God is actually telling us through the word of God that God is all things. God is the devil. The devil is God. We are God. Everything's all connected. I know this may not be a breakthrough moment for y'all if you listen to the Unlearned podcast quite a bit, but you already know that everything's fractal. But yet experiencing it is totally different than reading it in a book or hearing a piece of scripture. What I mean is like the experiential wisdom that comes from knowing that everything is God allows me to look at you or look at my woman or be vulnerable because I realize that I'm just being vulnerable to myself anyways. So this illusionary war that we fight at times, especially as men, is perpetuated by the illusion that we aren't all connected.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so simple. It's so simple. And we make it so complicated that Cal is separate from Josh, or Josh is separate from Cal, or even I'm separate from Enzo the dog. Like, we all have the same air we're breathing. We're all made from the same source. And I want to inject even more truth in this, because somebody listening may have real financial stress, or they're seeking out and they find the podcast because they're in a low point in their life. This is not just esoteric babble that I'm speaking. This is actually transformational fodder that if you really go into it and you have an open heart and you're praying about it and you're connecting with it, you will start to understand that it's the fear of being vulnerable with yourself that's actually making you have this illusionary fear that you can't be vulnerable with your woman, or that if a woman can't be vulnerable with a man. And it's just this amalgamation of all the trauma and all the baggage and all the things that we've picked up that give us the unconscious evidence as to why we shouldn't be vulnerable. Well, I can't be vulnerable this time because last time so-and-so did this. I can't be vulnerable this time because my life has never worked out that way. Or I'm just the kind of person that identifies with not being vulnerable. You see what I mean? We feed ourselves these bullshit stories, and we wonder, which is a cool phrase, we wonder why it's so hard for us to open up and just to be authentically us. It's because this is part of the conditioning that we're taking off. This is part of the onion that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. This is part of the unlearning. But in order to do that, you have to have spiritual courage. And so I think we only earn spiritual courage in these moments where we come back from the golf course and we're sitting alone for a month and we wonder, what's up with this prayer thing? Maybe I should do that. Why is it so hard to pray? Why is it so hard to be still without any inputs from stimulants? I think it's because it's the part of us that we're rejecting, or that we're not accepting, or that we're disconnected from, that is just asking for love. It's just wanting us to give it a hug, give it some attention. Mm-hmm. And that's what our women want from us anyways. They want from us the very thing that we're giving to us. So if we're robbing ourselves from that thing, then we can't even give it to her. So I think a lot of us as men, we get stuck in these rumination loops of like, well, why can't I be vulnerable with her? And why can't I handle it all? And why do I do these things? And I just think that's the wrong questioning. And I've fallen into that too. Mm-hmm. I think a more powerful, empowering line of questioning is, who would I be? What's my identity without all of these things that I'm looking for the answer for? Who do I want to be? Not just perception shift, but truly, like, if I want to be a vulnerable man, then what would a vulnerable man do in this situation? Mm-hmm. If I want to be a compassionate man, what would a compassionate man do in this situation? If I want to be an emotionally intelligent, trustworthy man, what would he do in this situation? And then just practicing that, much like when we go to the gym. You don't go to the gym and all of a sudden try to squat 500 pounds and think you're going to lift the bar. It's not going to happen.
Right.
So the very first time that we practice compassion, vulnerability, intelligence, safety, groundedness, there's going to be a delta of learning that we have to be courageous enough to face. Before we can squat 500 pounds, you have to start with the bar. Yeah. I think emotional relating is the same way. We have to be willing to fumble around and be like, babe, I don't know what I'm going to say right now, but this is kind of what's going on for me, and just shit all over yourself as you do it. Yeah. I think we don't want to appear stupid or weak for our women. And so we hide behind this veil of perfection, but we're all born innately imperfect. So again, it's this roundabout. I hope you don't mind. I'm going super long here. It's this roundabout thing where we're looking for the one thing. And the one thing is that there is no one thing. The one thing is actually just to move forward and do it and be a student and have a child beginner's mind and learn how to do it along the way. Whether you're 14 or 80, just do it and just practice it. And eventually you'll get great. It's easy to do the physical stuff because the physical stuff doesn't involve vulnerability emotionally. Right. The emotional vulnerability is similar to the physical training, yet it's so much harder because the unconscious mind loves safety and security. And so we're fighting against both biology and generational stuff at the same time. I think that's why it's so challenging for us.
Yeah, no, that's well said. And it's, there's like, you mentioned, it hadn't really occurred to me, but when Peyton comes to me and is being vulnerable about her needs and, how they're not being met, I just have a hard time not feeling a lot of shame around not showing up that way. And so rather than just be this open vessel for her to pour into and say, this is what I need, there's not always, but there's a little defensiveness. There's like, fuck, can I get this right? Will I get this right? And I can stay a bit mired in that thought.
I have a real world just happened example that I can throw down right now.
Let's do it.
Because you literally reminded me 3 days ago, I had an argument with my lady, and she happens to be on her cycle, which again, I'm in mastery of the water. I'm in mastery of understanding that. And maybe not even understanding it, just being with it. And so in my male mind, I'm like, well, tell me what it is and I'll fix it. Yeah. That's always the thing, right? Yeah. Woman comes with problem, man drags club and says, I fix. So instead of me doing the normal thing, we've said some things that were hurtful, and repair is so important when you have children, because I think God gives us children so we know how to be better adults. I really believe that. Like, you've probably learned so much from your children that was a complete correlation to how you'd show up better for your woman. Do you agree?
Yeah.
In many different ways.
I know it's often is very cliche that the kids are our greatest teachers, but
no, they
with
really
the exception of my wife, the four of them are, even our animals are great teachers if I'm paying attention. But yeah, like my kids, when I'm on and picking up what they're putting down, it's like, oh, good God, this is super challenging and you're doing this for me. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
And that helps, because sometimes it's so frustrating. Like, what the fuck? How do you not see this?
Yeah.
And then in a moment of like clarity, it's like, oh, you're teaching me something here.
Well, I'll say something that may, and then I'll circle back to the original point. It may not be easy to be heard by women that have been, let's be honest, co-opted by hardcore feminism. I'm not talking about feminism in its beauty. I think equality is great. Hardcore feminists may not like my comment. I actually think it's the man's job to be an anchor in situations that call for his groundedness the most. Mm-hmm. And what does being an anchor look like or feel like? It means I'm rooted in the ground. I'm like a bamboo reed. You can bend me, but I won't break. And then I come back. Or an oak tree. I'm rooted. I provide shade. I hold the space. But you and I have heard this so many times. It's like, what the fuck does that even mean? Holding space. Like, what's the practicality around that? It means that 3 days ago, when my lady and I have a fight, instead of me doing what my ego, and I'm not here to demonize my ego either, because I think the ego is actually an integral part of us. I don't agree with Ryan Holiday's work where he says the ego is the enemy. I think it's the opposite. I think the ego is a friend. But just like any friendship or relationship, there has to be boundaries, right? If I have a friend that doesn't have boundaries or respect them, they're not going to be my friend for too long. Same thing with my ego. Mm-hmm. So 3 days ago when I'm with Carrie and we have this rupture, I immediately, and I'm giving this a testament to the training I've done. Have I mastered it? No, but I'm in mastery of it. I ask myself, what would I have want to have seen when my parents argued, or when my dad came over when I was young and broke a flower pot and slammed a window and my parents are screaming at each other? What would young Josh would have wanted in that situation? He would have wanted them to give each other a hug and said, I'm sorry. But it's the opposite in that moment of what my ego wanted me to do, which was be angry at her for a day, have an itemized list that it's all her shit, it's all her problem, it has nothing to do with me. So instead, I just ask myself, what is the opposite of what my ego is telling me to do? What's the opposite? And that's something I've been really interested in lately. Like, what's the opposite of what my reactiveness is trying to get? My reactiveness is trying to get me safe and self-righteous. My responsiveness as a man, the anchor, is wanting me to actually just lean into her and say, hey, baby, I'm sorry I said those things. And I'd really love to have a great day with you. How can we create a great day together? Great. Now that we've done the conversation, let's go and hug and kiss in front of Nova and Naya. Let's actually show them what healing a rupture looks like. And then it's everybody wins. Everybody wins. My kids get to see what healing looks like. I defeated my ego for a day.
Yeah.
I get to connect with her and show her a part of myself, because really vulnerability is the opposite of tension and of pride. That's really what it is. I have pride. I have tension. I'm going to withhold my battleship because you're encroaching upon what I think is a boundary. But actually, it's not a boundary at all. It's just a self-imposed line that I drew in the sand based on my own fragility, where if you cross that, I think I might die in some way.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. So then when I go through that repair process, everybody wins. I win, she wins, the children win. It's all good. And I think this is really a focus for all men. This has to be a focus for all men. Being the anchor doesn't mean being a soft, gushy, long-haired, jewel-wearing weakling.
Right.
Being vulnerable and being a really strong man is this switching power. I interviewed this guy named John Deloney, Dr. John Deloney. He's the partner with, I forget his name, the big financial guy that's on TV, Ramsey. So Ramsey and John Deloney talk about finances and relationships.
Okay.
And he was like, listen, the greatest thing you could ever do is be vulnerable with your woman, not because it makes you weak, but actually she respects you and loves you more for your strength. But it's a paradox, because that line in the sand that we arbitrarily drew came from a place where we were hurt before, or that we learned from our dad that it was supposed to be like this, or an ex-girlfriend completely demolished us. And so therefore I'm going to withhold this love from my woman because of this arbitrary boundary that actually doesn't make any sense. Now there's healthy boundaries for sure, but I think this is really what you and I are working on, or working with as men, is what's the real boundary? What's the real healthy boundaries in relationship? And how can we repair the ruptures for our woman, for ourselves, and our children? I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that idea of this. It's a paradox. And I think it's so ingrained in us in our conditioning that, to show strength, and we could get over that in crying in public and those things. Like those are like 101, like vulnerability, I think. I don't think that's such a big deal. The real vulnerability is what we're talking about. Like when our ego wants to be like, fuck you, I'm going to withhold from you. I'm shutting you out. I'm going to show you what it's like to cross me, whatever the story is.
Yeah.
I'm telling myself, it's really to show her that I can be intimate and I can be compassionate and I can open myself up, knowing full well that I can be a warrior when I need to be. And I don't always need to be a warrior. And I think gosh, whether it's watching football or it's just, we get a steady diet of the warrior archetype.
Yeah.
Not always well integrated. And although when we do get the well integrated one on the football field or whatever, we're like, that guy's a gangster. And it's not because he's taking people's heads off, but you just know he just does it the right way. He's able to do both. Really, I saw that there was a pretty bad hit over the weekend with the Texans and the Jags. Anyway, long story short, CJ Stroud, his teammate was the one who did the gnarly hit. It was a dirty hit. And he was like, look, I hope Trevor feels okay. The guy who got hurt. He just has so much love for him. We're going to pray for him, And, he's still my guy, the guy who kind of had the dirty hit. He's like, I'm going to still ride with him. I know what's in his heart. And just not being a tough guy, really like a fucking gangster on the field and off the field, just like, wow, that guy's special. To be able to do both. And I think I'm being called to show that other side of me a lot more in my intimate relationship. I'm able to do it with my kids quite easily. It's just more challenging, and I think it's that whole notion, or part of it is the notion that I can have everything sorted out. I'm the guy that where you're leaning on for certain things in in this house. And if I'm not living up to my expectations, where are those even coming from? Right? Back when I was creating this financial abundance, whatever, I wasn't really thinking about that. It just kind of flowed. And now that it seems like there's a fixation on it, it's so interesting. It's like the more you grasp it, it's like it's kind of falling through the hands almost. It's very interesting. There's like for most of my life, I'd say I've lived with this abundant mindset, and I feel like over the past year and a half, scarcity has been knocking on the door and come in, and I've given it a seat at the table. And it's interesting. I know this all kind of plays in. I'm just trying to figure out the chessboard here, but it is something that I'm a bit unfamiliar with.
The fact that scarcity is at the table.
Yeah, it just hasn't been,
sure,
a frequent visitor, let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever gotten such a strong ping in your life that you can't describe it with words, but the ping you just got is so utterly real?
Talk to me.
I got one of those like 6-7 years ago when I heard Bob Proctor say, when you take from abundance, abundance is still there. And I will always remember that, because there's many times in my life, like I play a different game than you, right? But our games still have similarities, because I don't know anybody that doesn't sometimes occasionally let the scarcity sit at the table. I think that's just a human thing.
For sure.
There could be billionaires that are afraid of losing their billions, right? So you can't tell me that they're not letting scarcity in intermittently. Right. But if you really feel into the power of that prayer, you take from abundance and abundance is still there. There's actually nothing to fear. The only thing that we fear is the person we're going to become to love the scarcity so much that it naturally just goes to another home. That's the fear. It's like, wait, scarcity's here. What is this calling forth in myself so that I can love this scarcity? I think back to another bomb drop I got from Gay Hendricks. He wrote The Big Leap. And he's like, Josh, in order to really live life and be empowered and be liberated, you have to be able to love your fear. And at the time, this is like 5 years ago, I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Love my fear? How do I love my fear? Then he said, well, it's a practice. You know how you love your wife or you love your children or you love anything in life? Just love your fear, because it's there to teach you something great. Now, intellectually, I could check that off and be like, okay, I'm going to create a checklist and love my fear from now on, but that doesn't work like that. No. But if I can truly practice with my prayer, with all the things we've discussed so far, and this is the kicker, is to not allow myself to just consciously say no when I feel the shame dragon coming in, because shame is the lowest human frequency. If you look at Hawkins' work, it is the absolute lowest frequency we can ever feel. So if we get stuck in that frequency, it can immediately exit the nervous system by just saying, okay, thank you for allowing me to feel that. Now I'm going to go up to acceptance. Then I'm going to go up to the power to change. Then I'm going to walk the ladder up and utilize some kind of more empowering vibration in my body, just because I'm being conscious of the thoughts that are directing that vibration. It's putting some real practicality on the LOA conversation is what I'm attempting to do. I think that a lot of times some of these concepts we've described today are so esoteric. They can be such a black hole of like, well, what do I actually do?
Yeah, what's the action?
What's the action that I do? And maybe this is my male mindset. Like, what's the thing? But what I'm getting at is like the scarcity's at the table because it's wanting to show you something great. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there. Like, for example, I'll ask you and me and everyone, do you believe that everything is working out for you? Is that a real question you can answer? Like, not to put you on the spot, but do you truly in your whole body believe that everything is always working out for you?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I believe, and I'm not perfect at this answer either, I'm like 80-20. I feel like 80% of the time I've trained myself to believe that everything's working out for me. 20% of the time I fall into this trap where I think things are happening to me. And I victimize myself. Oh my God, this thing. But just in the same way that we train our physical self or we do our breath work, I'm about to do a 4-day somatic breathwork training because I've just been called to go deeper into breathwork again. The way in which we train our physical self, or we train our financial mind, or we train with our prayer, it's all the same. It's all the same commitment to it. So I'm not trying to reductionize anyone's pain, because you were straight up honest. You're like, no, I don't always think that things are working out for me. And so I think when we can, in our gut, in our esoteric nervous system, when we can sit here and really be like, I fully trust that regardless of my external circumstances, or regardless of the evidence I've received or that I've collected, I truly believe that everything is working out for me. I truly believe that. It's in my bones. It's in my body. I believe it. And if we can do that many, many more times than not, I think that it's impossible for scarcity to stay around forever. All chaos is seeking order, right?
Yeah.
So there's no way it could be at the table forever.
No, I love that too. And as you're saying that, I had a ping on the scarcity piece, and it was almost like such a juxtaposition of the conversation we had downstairs when we were like, do you look around? Do you like have an appreciation for like this home? And it's like not that often, and it's like how on some level the scarcity that I'm feeling, it's not just the financial piece, but it feels like it's very much rooted there. It seems absurd when in the context of like, look at this house. It's pretty cool.
Look at your other house too.
So
look at your houses.
It's like, so maybe that's part of the gift of the scarcity. It's like, appreciate what you have, because you're wanting to feel all of this scarcity, but look at what you do have. Look at what you have created. Okay, so that's interesting to me. Again, there have been times where I've felt in flow, right? Obviously. And it's like everything is happening for me.
Yeah.
And it is in times like this. And I've been in times like this before, just like we all have some version of this where it's like, this feels icky, sticky. I feel stuck. I feel lost. I feel disconnected. I feel numb. I feel low energy, very little inspo, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, it is in these moments when we come out of them and we reflect back on them, we're like, oh, that's why that happened. If we reflect back on it.
Yeah.
So I have had the experience in my life multiple times where I've had hardship. I've gone through difficult things and have seen the gifts after the fact. I think the real gift, or what I'm being called to right now, is to, and as you said, can you in this moment when things don't feel great, can you see that everything is happening for you? Can I see that everything is happening for me? And that is intellectually understand that.
For sure.
We've been there, right?
Yeah.
We get all that. And that sounds, quite frankly, like it's part of the prayer for me, is just rooting into that and really trying to feel that and believe that.
Dude, you know what I'm thinking of? I don't know if you ever read it. It's Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
No, I'm familiar with it.
But the lesson is supreme for all of us. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Whether your environment is like $100 million outside of you or $1 in your pocket, the work remains the same on either side of the boundary. So whether you've achieved the $1 billion or whether you have $1 in your pocket, the same spiritual work remains on either side. It's like, you know, that scale of Lady Liberty where we're always trying to find the center. So when you have $1 billion on one side, but your wife doesn't want to talk to you and your kids don't want to see you, are you well?
Yeah.
When you're completely broke, but your woman is ride or die and your children love you, I would say you're more well than on the other side. So what I'm saying is like, it's not that we have to always be in this perfect flow. I think that's a fleeting dragon that we shame ourselves with. I need to be in constant flow.
Yeah.
That's bullshit. That actually just sets us up for being out of flow when we have the expectation that we always should be in flow. That's the opposite of when you're in flow, you're not trying to maintain your position of flow. You're just in flow. You know, there's no fear of being out of flow later.
No, you're right.
You're just in the flow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that it's this chopping wood and carrying water, man. Like you asked me earlier, as I've expanded, what have been the hardest challenges? A little cricket, like a Jiminy Cricket wearing a dark tuxedo has come on my shoulder and he's like, how are you going to handle it all? As you grow, how are you going to handle it all? Now your overhead is tens of thousands of dollars a month for your team. How are you going to handle it all? That voice kicks. And it's sometimes 80-20. I feel like it wins. 20% of the time it wins.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's lots of strategies I go to for that. Obviously, I work with a therapist, right? I do breath work. I'll microdose psilocybin. I'll go in the cold. Like I have the tools. I built my house, so I have all the tools. That's another thing is all the things I'm saying you can usually get for free anyways, right? You don't have to buy a red light therapy. You can go in the sun. You can go cold water. You can talk to a friend. But building an environment around you where you can hold yourself when you get in these dark moments where the dark piece on your shoulder starts to tell you shit that isn't true. That allows me to not fixate on it, not ruminate on it for so long. In my past, earlier version of Josh would ruminate the shit out of that thought and even be afraid that the thought was there. But it's just a thought. It's like outside when a leaf falls off the tree, if you could see that tree out your beautiful window, all of the millions of leaves out there are literally just thoughts. They're just fucking thoughts that we have. And so when I attach to a thought and I hold it and I ruminate on it and I keep believing that that thought is me, well, then I just feed that thought and then that becomes a fractal of my reality. When I hold the leaf and I go, wow, that's interesting. Thought about pornography today. Thought about scarcity today. Thought about the fact that maybe I'm not worthy for my woman to love today. Thought about the fact that my father hasn't seen his grandchildren ever, nor met my woman in 5 years. If I attach to these thoughts, I'm saying those because they're real. Those are thoughts that I have, right? But those aren't thoughts that I fucking am. I am not those thoughts. But those thoughts might feel real to the degree that I attach emotion to them. That's the core teaching of Dispenza, right? That we've all heard. A thought doesn't become real until you attach emotion to it. The thought is the door. The emotion is the key. So when I attach emotion to the door, then I'm literally breathing that into life. So I'd much rather, and it is so simple. It's like God made it so easy for us. And we complicate the shit out of it so deeply that we can just grab a different key. And yes, it is that simple. It is that simple to just consciously choose another key, consciously choose your thoughts, but it takes work. Just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. So it takes work of chopping wood and carrying water on either side of the evidence of abundance or scarcity being there. It's the same fucking work on either side. And I think we fall into the trap where once we have the thing or your buddy with the billion, then I won't have to chop wood and carry water. But that's actually when you'll revert back to the old version because you're not chopping wood and carrying water. I want to work and do what we're doing till I die. I want to podcast. I want to share. I want to learn in public till I leave the planet. There's no thought in my mind that I'm going to like retire or stop working. Would my work look different? Yeah, for sure. I'd probably only do exactly what I want 100% of the time. That's freedom. That's liberation. But the chopping wood and the carrying water, you're trying to tell me that when I'm 70 years old that I won't be triggered by my wife? I'm sure I will. Right? It's not going to, the work doesn't stop just because we've reached a plateau or a pinnacle. I think the work actually intensifies at times. So there's no way around it is what I'm saying. There's no way around doing the work. It's always about recommitting to the work. And that's the fallacy that I think the new age spirituality has sold many people. That, it's all love, brother, good vibes only. If somebody doesn't feel good in your field, remove them. It's complete bullshit because that person is there to present something to you that you're not seeing. So yeah, it's all the same is what I'm saying. The work on either side is the same. That's it.
I love that. I've talked about this a few times on the podcast, but it is that whole concept of, you have this goal set out, or you want to make a certain amount of money, you want to do this, you want to check that box. And I haven't really met anyone that's done those things and been like, okay, I did it. I'm good now. There's no completion to your point. There's chop wood, carry water, no matter what. It's just such an arbitrary thing. This guy wants to be a billionaire, me, whatever I may want. It's arbitrary. And I think for a while I had an aversion to goal setting. And then when I did, because I was never really, I don't think I was taught the right way. It just didn't make sense to me. It felt like too narrow of a kind of eye of the needle to go through versus like an expanded, like, let's go in this direction. And then, meeting Dan Martell, I think was really helpful to that with his whole goal setting kind of system. And I gained a lot from my time with him. And I feel like there was some good anchoring there for me. As I was sharing with you before we got on, there was probably a little bit too much structure for my orientation. A lot of structure for me. I usually throw in a dash of rigidity, and then a lot of it becomes unconscious. And so I think kind of recommitting to some sort of structure where I can still play and do my thing.
Yeah.
But because I've been operating largely without structure for the last several months, and there's a freedom to that. And there's a like kind of looking back on like, feels like you've maybe pissed away some time there. Not that everything needs to be productive, but it feels like that season of like letting the, kind of hands off the wheel, foot off the brake, whatever. It maybe went on longer than I would have liked. Then again, maybe it's gone on as long as it's supposed to. And it's led me to this point today, talking to you and bringing prayer into my life. I mean, it's again.
Is that a completely new thing for you, praying?
Yeah.
It is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what I've really been entrenching myself in over the past 2 years that totally relates to our conversation is the lens that we're looking at life through. Like you have this beautiful window. Maybe y'all can see this at some point. There's this epic castle window that I'm looking through over Cal's shoulder. Cool. And behind it is this beautiful trees and nature and all these wonderful things. And so it's this amazing lens. So how could I not have the vantage point that life is beautiful when I'm looking through a lens like that? And so for 2 years, ever since
I'm facing a goddamn gun safe.
You might want to swap. Let's get you to swap. We'll swap the chairs, and then you can look out there at the beauty, or just carve out a new window there. No, what I'm saying is that since I changed the name of the podcast, I think at your old place when we did that quadcast with John and with Luke, I didn't own a home yet. The podcast was still called Wellness Force. I changed the name of Force to Wisdom, part and parcel through my woman and a mushroom journey, giving me the guidance to do so, which is a whole nother story. Yeah. But when I replaced force with wisdom, it's like my whole body just took a breath, because that's the lens that I'm seeing life through now. Imperfectly so. I'm not always 100% on it.
Oh, yeah.
But the lens is physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and financial. It's a pentagon. And so the more I can nourish those 5 sides of Josh and be in total humility about when I'm not nourishing it, or when I'm aware that one part of the pentagon is robbing another part, then at least I'm looking through a beautiful window. I'm always looking into this window of self. I'm nourishing these 5 sides of myself. And so I think that's a really amazing guidepost for us to live by, to chop wood and carry water. Because like you said, if too much rigidity is present, and maybe you have a lot of hedonism or playtime, well, then your spiritual connection might suffer. If you're pouring into your finances and that's the number one thing, well, then maybe your physical will start suffering. So it's this constant Lady Liberty balancing act for us in these 5 aspects of self that's literally life-changing, because it's the window that we see ourselves through. Either I'm starving one of those 5 sides, or I'm feeding one of those 5 sides. And then it's just like, oh, from that place, from that conversation, like what's possible? You know, if I'm noticing that one of my 5 is being starved, then cool. Can I just address it with some love and compassion instead of being at war with myself about it? Like I used to be 280 pounds back in the day.
I can't believe that.
And I had a pornography addiction and I was a total asshole, actually. I really was. I found podcasting because podcasting is my therapy. It's the thing that allows me to learn out loud in public, which is, I think, the most healing for other people too.
Yeah, I wanted so dig a little deeper on that. Like, what inspired you to start your podcast? Because you started it almost 10 years ago.
10 years in 2025.
Yeah, like that was kind of early days.
I feel like I was late.
And I was 5 years after that. So,
but we're never late.
No,
it's always the perfect time to start looking in.
Who were you listening to that inspired you to do this?
Yeah.
Like, what was that about for you?
You know, one of the first people I ever heard speak was Paul Chek in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
That was like a big fire that was lit. I was a personal trainer at the time, and I was just really focused on the body, you know, shining light on other people. Yeah. So I could stay dark.
Of course. You had dropped the weight at that point?
Yeah, I dropped the weight and I had a 6-pack. So I was like, on the outside, everybody was like, oh, this guy's got it all mastered. This is cool.
Yeah.
But really what was going on is I was shining light on other people so that I could still stay a porn addict.
Yeah.
And drink 3 beers at night to go to sleep, being a health professional.
Mm-hmm.
So I was out of integrity with myself. I don't say that to shame that version of Josh, because like, he was amazing. That was the coping strategy he learned. But as I started listening to even Abraham Hicks, Wayne Dyer, you know, people like that in the beginning, like 2008, 2009, 2010.
Damn.
So for 4 years, I just was collecting all this knowledge, but it wasn't wisdom because I wasn't putting it into practice. I wasn't applying it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's beautiful because we all go through the gathering phase of wellness, right? The arc of wellness is like we gather, we apply, and then we embody. So if I'm going to embody, I have to have the courage to apply. And what greater place to apply than in public? Because it's the most vulnerable. It's the most out in the open. Carrie and I have done a podcast together talking about how we almost broke up with our therapist on the podcast. Like that's what people need to hear. The days of listening to Oprah where she talks to somebody about how to manifest something on a Tuesday are done, dude. Right. We're not inspired by this anymore. Right. What we are inspired by is people sharing their real crunchy shit in public, not because they need attention for it, but because that's what everyone else is suffering with too.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are looking for the solutions on the things they're suffering with. But the only way they can get those things is if we do that in public, if we share what we're suffering with in public.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the gravity of launching the podcast actually was knowing that I was out of alignment, knowing that I didn't love myself enough at the time to feel my voice was even valuable to share. I mean, I love speaking. One of the things in 2025 that I get to do is be on stages and speak and talk about liberation and the Liberated Life tribe that we're building. And just this concept of liberation doesn't have to be so esoteric and so unreachable. Liberation comes in stages. I didn't know that when I started the podcast. When I started the podcast, I was like 80 grand in debt, super unhealthy, addicted to porn. Like it was not the environment, Cal, for me to believe that what I was doing was worthy, right? Because earlier
you were living with a friend, yeah?
I was in a friend's bedroom.
Yeah.
Couldn't even pay him rent because I was so in debt. And in the span of like 3 to 6 months, I put my mom in a mental home. I got fired from a quote, safe corporate job. And I broke up with a woman that I thought I was going to be with. So it was like universe, like 3 big punches, 3 big punches that really brought me to my knees. But that was perfect because it was from that place that finally I just waved a white flag and I said, okay, what is it that you'd like me to do, God? Because I don't want to do this anymore. I wasn't going to commit suicide, but I was just like, I refuse to be a cog in someone else's wheel anymore. I'm not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing shit that I hate. I'm not going to go work at a corporate place. Like I want to do something real. I want to do something fucking real with my life. And what was real was exactly where I was.
Mm-hmm.
Addict, unhealthy, broke, That's where you start. You start right fucking there.
Shit.
For any creator that wants to create anything, you start with the honesty of where you are. That's the most liberating thing. Because really, dude, I believe this, and I don't know how you feel about this. I believe that we are only as liberated as our darkest secrets.
Mm-hmm.
Because secrets, the only time a secret is powerful is when it's a gift that you're going to share in the present moment or the future. But a secret that runs your life is a secret that you're not only keeping from yourself, you're keeping from others. And we can all feel that, right? Like, can't you feel when somebody's out of integrity when which they speak? They might sound amazing. Wow, this person's a great speaker and they have all these followers and they're so popular. But you sense them with your energetic body, with your enteric nervous system, and you go, something's off there. Like something ain't right.
Yeah.
Trust that. And so my goal with my life is to be as honest with myself and others as to exactly where I am on my spiritual and personal evolution, because that's what fucking people deserve. And so do I. We all just deserve honesty in the moment. That's why we have this amazing conversation together.
That's right.
I'm not sitting here trying to like boast and be like, well, when I achieved this many downloads, Cal, what I learned that I'll share with you on the mountain is, fuck that. Yes. People want to know what you're struggling with. Even the most powerful creators here in Austin with millions and millions of followers, they're struggling too.
Yeah.
Everybody struggles with something. So I think we're only as empowered, we're only as liberated as our darkest secrets. And I think that secrets can be a good thing. The secrets aren't always bad, but the more secretive I'm being about my shit to myself or others, it holds me hostage. It dampens my potential. And, earlier you asked me like, what was the one thing? If I was to say it's one thing that helps us as men, is to share all of our secrets with the people that we love, because they're going to love us anyways. And we think that they're not going to love us.
We think that's right.
We think that they're not going to love us
That's
when
right.
we share the secrets that we're holding on to that are keeping us hostage. But they're actually going to love us more. They're going to love us so much more.
Yeah.
Because then they're accessing our full heart and our full self that they've been longing for anyways.
They've known that there's a withholding.
They know.
Yeah.
Like you might say something to your wife and she's like, I know. I already knew that.
Yeah.
I've told Carrie Michelle things before and she's like, I know. It's like the power of the woman.
Yeah.
The woman is power, dude. The woman is very powerful.
Yeah.
Especially if she's an attuned woman.
Yeah.
No greater mirror.
We have attuned
women and children for men are the most powerful mirrors because they show us all the ways we've constructed secrets that run our lives.
Oof.
They do, right? Yeah. There's a woman in the room, so she knows. Lindsay knows what's up. When she brings that divine feminine wisdom, there's nowhere to hide. You can't hide from it. Well, you can. You can try to hide from it.
Yeah, I've tried.
But then she's just going to watch you hide from it.
Yeah.
Nobody wins.
I see you behind the couch.
Nobody wins in that situation.
No.
So yeah, I'm really entrenched over the past 2 years since I changed the name of the pod.
Yeah.
But that was from divine feminine wisdom to wisdom instead of force, because wisdom is just way more fun. Wisdom, so much like seeking wisdom, which is what you're doing and I'm doing. Mm-hmm. It's so fun. It's not all fun all the time. It's kind of crunchy and uncomfortable a lot. But what else would we be doing, man? I mean, what else would be fulfilling than having real conversations that people want to have, but they've been fed a story that they can't have them?
Yeah. And I love, this idea of, obviously wellness has been consistent from the jump for you. The wisdom, not only are you carrying that now, right? Where you were carrying some back in the day when you started it, for sure.
Yeah.
You're carrying a lot more today, and you're bringing on people that are sharing their journey and their wisdom. And I think that's the beauty of the way we both, kind of construct our show, is to bring on people that have life experience that we think is valuable, important, interesting. And there are nuggets that they're just sharing. And they might even have no idea how important it is for people to hear their story. They're just like, this is just who I am. This is how I live my life.
Yes.
but we see something in them like I see in you. That's why I wanted you on. Like there's so much that you've been through and your experience is so good on the mic that I know this is going to be an easy, fun conversation. We're going to get into what I'm going to have all these notes. I don't know if I've
typical.
I haven't hit on any. I hit addiction, yeah, but but like I think it's so important for those who have walked through the fire to share that, not someone who's read about what it is to walk through the fire. You talked about earlier, knowledge versus wisdom, and that's just like you either know about something or you know something. And there's a big difference when you hear someone talk about knowing about something. You're like, okay, that's interesting, cool. And then when someone knows it, there's a different frequency resonance.
Yeah,
you're there with them. And I think where we get put off, or I'll just speak for myself, is when we see the people on Instagram talking like they know about something, and they think they know something, and they just really know about it. And it's like, you're full of shit. You say you haven't had a bad day in your life, yada, yada, yada. Like, fuck off. Like, I got no time for you.
Yeah.
I do have some love for you. Trying to work on that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you're serving, you're going to serve the people at a lower frequency because that's what you're calling in. But I think when you lead with an open heart and vulnerability, you get a different resonance with people who sit across from you and the people who listen and the people who are called to listen.
You just made me remind myself of, there are people like Andy Frisella, David Goggins. There's this other like shaved tan guy. I forget his name, Andy Elliott. Like there's these people that have massive followings, right? And a lot of what they share is really good for somebody who's just starting or who might need a swift kick in the ass. Mm-hmm. But the danger is if you listen to that type of a megaphone in perpetuity, you actually get hardened in your soul. David Goggins and Frisella and these people, they're great for like a dose because men might need that for a moment. But if you just drink that Kool-Aid for years and years and years and years, you might end up having 3 heart surgeries like Goggins has had, or going through turmoil and legal stress. Or what I'm saying is like, we have to be careful the wisdom that we gather from people and know that wisdom is finite for a reason, because as we go on the scale of evolution and personal journey, that wisdom comes to us in moments where we need it the most, but we have to be willing to let go of that wisdom so that new wisdom can be integrated as well. What I'm saying is like, it's easy to fall into a trap where once you get so healed or so changed by one thing, you think that one thing is going to carry you forever. Yeah. And it's no further from the truth. Like what made you successful as a trader, you could never apply for your entire life with your children or your wife. It doesn't work. It made you successful in one area, but you cannot have rigidity and think that one vehicle of success building is going to grow you in all aspects. I think that's something that everybody must be aware of, because it's really intoxicating to get a result, whether it's like Ozempic, or hacking crypto with altcoins, whatever. There's all these quick things that you can do to generate a quick result. Mm-hmm. But on the tail end of a quick result is going to be a quick crash, because it's not long-term integrated wisdom. And I think we constantly have to be open to learning new things. There's no way around it. There's no way around keeping an open mind and a beginner's mind, right?
I agree. And I think that bringing up those guys, I think is an interesting thing. It's something that I've thought about quite often, not recently, but as they were really on the come up, it's like, oh, that's really interesting. It can be really inspiring. Yeah. And as I got more into my heart, I was like, oh, that's dangerous for a lot of people to subscribe to that long term, because they're not built that way.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. There are principles. So again, like I said before, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but be careful of like how much you try to reverse engineer what they're doing into you. Like there are great principles there. You've got to use some discernment in what that looks like for you. And if it's not working for you, waking up at 4:30, running 15 miles, then it's not working for you. It's okay. Like not everybody's wired that way. Some people love to wake up early in the morning. Some people love to stay up late. Like everybody's a bit different. Take those things that resonate, try them, throw them out, come back to them. Like every now and then I find myself creeping like, what are they talking about now that maybe I'm a point in my life where I need that, Andy Frisella kick in the ass. Maybe I need the hard 70. Maybe I don't. Maybe there's a different way to do it. Sometimes I need a little more discipline. Sometimes I need less structure. It's what am I, and I think it's having that consciousness around where you're at. It's easier to do that when you're off the substances and you have a clear head, and you have to sit in like sometimes being tired because you don't have anything to perk you up. Maybe you're just meant to rest right now. And hopefully you have the ability to rest. And if you don't, well, maybe the weekends when you could, I don't know. Like there's always a way to kind of fill that void, I guess. But I do think, people can get very enamored with that message because it is, as you said, is very intoxicating. And other people also say, fuck those guys. It's like, I don't think that's the answer either. Because there's stuff that's actually working quite well for them in some areas. We're not getting the full picture.
Yeah.
As far as I can tell, there's not a ton of heart stuff there. There's not a ton of vulnerability.
No.
At least the shit that I've seen, maybe that's changed. But, and there's some stuff that's like, come on, guy, you know?
Yeah.
Not for me at all. But that's what works for them. And I'm sure some of the shit that I say, they're like, that guy's a fucking tool or whatever, right? Like, fair. But I think there is like, and maybe that's like the real word for me in all this is just having like discernment and allowing it to be nuanced. Cause there have been times in my life where I've been, if I don't like a little bit, like I won't listen to any of it, and again, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And I think that, I don't love it when I'm in that energy.
Yeah.
That's more about me than anything else.
I really believe that the perfect message comes through at the perfect time if we're willing to hear it. And sometimes the perfect message is get off your ass and stop smoking weed. That's actually a great message.
Yes.
Right. So I'm not trying to discount that message, but if that's your messaging, this like shaming, self-loathing, you piece of shit, if that's going to try to carry you while you're caring for other people, that message of self-loathing is going to go into the people that you are trying to be there for. And that's completely unhealthy, right? That's not wisdom that needs to be used anymore. It was wisdom for a time and it worked and it produced a result, but it's not going to carry us forever. I think we always have to be open to new fuel sources. Like what drove many people that are successful in the beginning of their journey was pain. But once they get to a certain point of success, if they still try to tap into that pain as a fuel source, they'll implode because pain can't be experienced inevitably. At some point, love and joy has to fuel the mission. And I think just to circle one more wagon on this point, I learned this from Paul Chek, but I've also learned it from probably in some way every person I've had on the podcast. And that is you're less monetizable and you're less manipulable when you're living your life true to your heart on purpose. When you're living your life true to your heart on purpose, you may get wisdom from these Goggins, you may get wisdom from Chek, you may get wisdom from Callahan, whatever. That wisdom's going to hit you at the perfect time. But if you're on purpose and you're really refining and getting clear on your vision and like what you're here to do, you don't have to worry about getting stuck. You don't have to worry about all these things, these thoughts, or, even the scarcity conversation, because they're all happening to you as guideposts. It's almost like, when you go bowling and for kids, they put those guards in the rails.
Yeah.
So if every single time we attempt to move towards our dream, it's like rolling a bowling ball. Well, we have the gutters from God are right there. Like that we're never going to be stuck in the gutter forever. And if we do, there'll be another ball that spits out, we'll just play the game again. Yeah. So I'm reductionizing something that's maybe not always reductionizable, but it's really that simple of just recommitting to just throwing another hand and just keep going. I remember I was on a vision quest. I think I came to your house the week after I got home. Didn't we? 2-3 years ago?
Yeah.
And the wisdom that I got,
Dude.
when I asked God, like, God, I'm experiencing all this suffering. Like, what is it? After 3 days of not eating and only having water and nature, the wisdom that came through was just keep going. And I was like, that's it. Just keep going. But then I really understood what that was. And that's my word for 2025. My word for 2025 is trust, trust, trust. Just even the feeling of that, where it's like getting a hug from my grandma or something.
Yeah.
You know, just trust, baby. Just like she like stroking my hair. Just trust. Just trust. But it's really hard to trust when I've built evidence that life can't be trusted. That's the rub. So as I'm receiving wisdom that says, just keep going, AKA just trust, that's where I grow. It's like right there in that crunch point. Everybody wants to know the one thing. It's like, when you're getting new wisdom, have the awareness to see that the evidence that you've collected does not align with the new wisdom that you just received.
Yeah.
It's that simple. So am I in that moment going to love myself enough to lean into the new wisdom? Or do I, without shame, do I need to experience more of the old evidence I've collected and feel the pain of that for a little bit longer to finally decide, okay, I'm good with being at war.
Yeah.
I don't need to be at war anymore with this.
Yeah.
I'm not getting anything else from this war. I've collected all this. I have backpacks full of evidence that life can't be trusted. Why don't I try this new one and see what happens?
Yeah, because that's not the old one's not working anymore.
It's not working. It worked for a while.
Yeah.
One backpack was enough. 2, 3, 4, 5 backpacks full of evidence that life can't be trusted. Nobody's going to be able to keep walking.
No.
So can I just lean into this new wisdom and just try it and notice that you find that on these podcasts, it's always the same concepts with different words. It's always the same things with different vernacular. And that is float above your situation and see it from a different vantage point. Like that's really what I want to do in 25, man. I want to live my life and help others see their life through a different lens. And I think it's really cool. You have this beautiful lens, this window. Like that's what I'm doing for me. So that's what I'm giving to others.
So to shift gears here a little bit. Was I listened to you on the Meat Mafia podcast, which I thought was great. Actually, the first time I ever listened to them. Seem like good dudes.
Yeah, young and hungry guys.
Yeah, and they've got a product out, right?
It's like a protein.
Yeah.
Noble.
Yeah.
Noble protein.
Looks cool.
Yeah.
But you were talking about this concept that we live in this world, demonic energy, and you're starting to smile like I think your words were at war for our souls, hearts, and minds. Now, I think a year ago I'd have been like, but today I'm like, it's kind of been what I've picked up on too. And the reason I bring it up is a few reasons. One, I think it's a fascinating thing to bring into the awareness for people to just pay attention to.
Yeah.
Because cognitive dissonance is a thing, and it holds a lot of us back from seeing what is in plain sight. But also I think in my own journey of that, I found myself in different periods of like, not necessarily despair, but like it can get pretty heavy thinking about like, we're at fucking war with this thing, and that doesn't feel good either. And I know you have your own thoughts around being at war with something is giving it energy, and I love that. But I think there's a way to hold that, like, this is happening, potentially happening, and there's no reason to despair. Like, we're good, and this is how we work with it. And so, and just being able to articulate it in a way where people can receive it, I think, is a real fucking challenge. So I'm going to see how we do today.
Okay, let's go.
Because I think a lot of people, it can shut them off. Like, whoa, the demons and this and that and child trafficking and it just a lot of stuff. Yeah, so I don't even know where to begin with that, but I think, I mean, I guess one way, what have we learned from the uncovering of the P. Diddy stuff and the Jeffrey Epstein? You know, I think you can't believe everything you see on Instagram and YouTube, but when there's a lot of things that are pointing to different people doing the same shit, and it's so beyond our concept of what a person would do to another person, let alone a child, or without going too far down the rabbit hole there. People are like, it just can't be true. It can't be true. And I think what we're seeing, they did a great job, I think, of covering up a lot of the Epstein stuff, killing him, allegedly. And then with P. Diddy, I think it's become more difficult. I think the cat's gotten out of the bag more. There's more people that we're familiar with. It's opened up. That was the thing that really got me to open up to it. It's like my investigation, my personal investigation of what was going on there. And then the different rabbit holes I went down, which it's pretty dark.
Yeah.
Again, we saw it with Pizzagate. They fucking brushed that under the rug. But if you go back and look at the Podesta emails and Hillary Clinton and all, it is fucking, it's very telling. There's some dark stuff out there. Seems to have a lot of roots in Hollywood, the music industry. People don't necessarily want that to be the case because we love movies, we love television, we love music. You can love those things and not love what's happening.
Yeah. I think the greatest place to start would be if you've never, ever truly experienced evil in your life, it can be easy to have an aversion to it existing. What I mean is, if you've never seen murder, if you've never seen rape, if you've never seen abuse, if you have no life experience ever seeing or witnessing pure evil, then the first time that you see it or you hear about it, it's just naturally in our neurology to ignore it or to dismiss that it's real, because we have a proclivity to go towards pleasure, right? I mean, this is one of Tony Robbins' core teachings. People are motivated by two things, pain or pleasure. So if I'm motivated to know the truth, which is actually a third distinction that I love, then I have to be able to witness both pain and pleasure both. So I think that's the real start of the conversation piece, where if you experience evil to the degree that you've experienced it, then you can see it when it's placed in front of you. And many people that have watched Cinderella ever since they were a young girl, or, you know, watched all the Star Wars movies, it's so funny because there was inherently evil in all of those things. In every plot line or in every hero's journey, the main character always experiences evil. Always. So it's so easy for us to see it in a movie. But then in real life, when we are presented with it, we want to dismiss it as if it's fake and in a movie, because it's actually part of the conditioning from Hollywood. I can't name the name of this person, and I can't really go into detail of who he was, but I had a very connected person in Hollywood that shared with me at his home that essentially Hollywood is run by the gay Jewish mafia. And I'm not here to propagate fear in anyone's hearts, and by the way, I'm not anti-homosexual, anti-trans, like y'all live whatever life you want to live, go for it. But the fact that he told me that, and he's been in very high profile movies himself with lots of people that are actually harbingers of this demonic energy, that was all the evidence that I needed. And I don't gain anything from making up this story, by the way.
No.
When he told me, I was like, I wish you wouldn't have told me that. Right? Yeah. So, and it's the same thing in fashion. Fashion is all run by very demonic homosexuals. Can homosexuality be pure? I'm sure in someone's life experience, it could be.
Mm-hmm.
But in that vein, and in Hollywood and fashion specifically, that definitely in Los Angeles and in New York, there is a demonic, palpable energy that if anybody has any spiritual experience, they can feel it. Now, how do we feed it? We feed it by fighting it. You know, if somebody goes online and they say, fuck P. Diddy, fuck gay people, fuck trans, all you're doing is feeding these movements that essentially are only fueled by hate and by aversion and by resistance to it.
Kind of like what happened with Trump. I think the media just
kept bringing more attention to him, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that there's 2 points. First, if you've never experienced evil, it's going to be very hard to actually admit that it's true. Mm-hmm. Second, if you feed it by being angry at it, it's just going to grow stronger. I think that the universe, and especially the Fibonacci sequence, loves to think in threes. I think the third solution, the real solution, is to learn how to accept that it's real and divert the energy towards something that's more loving. So if children are being sexually abused, if there's a demonic narrative that is confusing young children and confusing their parents, that it's okay to cut off your genitals at 10 because you feel like you're a girl. I mean, I went through a huge Hawkins ladder on this. I had rage for years. When I first found out about it was from Jordan Peterson when he was on Rogan. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I am absolutely disgusted by my colleagues that they are allowing this genital mutilation to occur because the child feels like they were born the wrong sex. You would never let your child drive a car at 10. They can't even choose their own dinner, and you're going to let them choose their gender and cut off their private parts. The insanity that has been normalized through propagation in Hollywood, specifically the highest movie stars. Like I think Angelina Jolie has like 3 trans kids or something like that. And the probability that Peterson was talking about is you're more likely to get struck by a meteor than that being actually probable. So it tells you that. And I did a podcast with JP Sears on this, where we went deep into this. When the helping hand becomes the harming hand, there can be such a moment that your self-righteousness was actually wetiko, or dark energy, to quote Paul Levy. And for people that don't know, wetiko is what the Native Americans called a mind virus. So wetiko is some type of malevolent energy that is based on destruction or based on parasitic energy that goes into unknowing hosts. And then those unknowing hosts act out malevolence in the world. That's what wetiko is. But the beauty that Levy describes in his work is that encapsulated in the evil, or encapsulated in the problem itself, is the loving solution. And that's that third part that I was sharing. So first, accept that it's real, because the only way that you can know love and joy is by its opposite. Then see in your life where maybe you've even been so averted to, or had so much aversion towards evil being real, that you chose to just completely be in denial, which is possible. And then go to the third solution, that is just the recognition that the only way that you are going to defeat the evil is by not actually being at war with it, by not feeding it. And the solution for child mutilation, child sex trafficking, gender dysphoria, all these extremely uncomfortable things. I mean, they're so uncomfortable. Somebody might have even turned this off right now because it's so uncomfortable. Yeah. If y'all still with us, good, because this is the thing that makes you more spiritually mature, is knowing that not everything is all love and light. So the opposite of, it's so funny, the opposite of addiction is connection. So if people can become addicted to evil, because I think evil gives us a catecholamine response, a hormonal response, it's addictive. This is why people get into drugs, because the inherent nature of drugs, or of pornography, or of this objectification and over-sexualization of women, it's essentially a Jezebel spirit that's talked about in the Bible. And the one thing that a Jezebel spirit, or the Native Americans called this spirit wetiko, which is essentially a malevolent energy that harbors inside of a person that doesn't even know they don't know they're carrying it. The way that you extinguish it is actually by learning how to accept it, learning how to love it, and then it'll go find someone else that just wants to fight against it and feed it. So the way that we defeat this I mean, I can't, it's such a broad topic. We don't have enough time to cover this in
Right.
your podcast. The fact that children are being harmed in any way just makes me want to take an M16 and just blow all these people up. Like that's my reactiveness, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could not imagine someone harming a child knowingly knowing they're doing it. I mean, it just makes me want to cry just to even think about it. It's so insane. The evil is so deep. Yet, if you look at the subtle imagery and the messages, specifically in like Little Mermaid and a lot of these kids' movies, just recently there was a Wicked movie that came out, and it has wicked.com on the toys that are sold in Target. Wicked.com is a pornography site. So on the box, they put wicked.com. And then when the company who makes the toys were called out, they said, oh, it was a printing error. Well, meanwhile, millions of toys are in Target with wicked.com on the toy. So you tell me, was that a mistake, or was that malevolent, evil energy, demonic energy trying to impregnate children's minds that pornography is fine? Y'all tell me. You think that a multi-million or billion-dollar toy company is going to make a mistake in their quality check process? I don't think so.
No.
Those packages are gone over with a fine-tooth comb. Everybody checks those packages.
Oh, yeah.
There's absolutely no way that could have been a mistake, in my opinion. So there's clues that we start to collect. With curiosity, could it be a really good way to think? By the way, I'm not telling y'all how to think. It's just how I have learned how to think better. Could it, I ask myself, could it be possible that blank? Not, I know that's possible because then I'm just being reactive. Could it be possible that this was intentional? That putting a pornography site on children's toys was intentional? And if that's true, then could it also be possible that the motivation to do that was blank? I believe the motivation to do that was to try to normalize pedophilia and normalize pornography even more. That's what I believe. Does that cause me peace? No, that does not cause me peace. That actually brings deep sadness to me, anger and then sadness. So I think the way that we, as in many threads in our pod that we've talked about, is we actually just do the work to become more aware, see it for what it is, whether it's Epstein and the camera all of a sudden not working, or P. Diddy. We haven't heard anything about this person. They probably locked in a jail cell in Bermuda or something out of fear of people being caught. I think the way that we approach this as parents and a collective is that instead of fighting against the thing that we don't want, we start having conversations that put women and children at the center of all things. Because if you start respecting a woman and a child in a family unit and you make her and them the center, then you always have a check and balance system to your behavior and your intentions that'll lead you towards strengthening families. Strengthening families is the goal, because when a kid sees a pornography site on accident, they have so much love and so much bolstering of love through their family that's been infused by the father and mother and by society itself that they just don't even care about the porn. That's what I needed when I was young. I found magazines on my dad's table because he was addicted to porn. So hurt people. So we know this on every level. So with Hollywood being so flagrant and so just obnoxious in the way that they're stuffing this transsexualism and gender dysphoria down our throats and normalizing it, that's the worst part. They're normalizing it by boiling the frog 1 degree at a time. Oh, it's just porn. Oh, it's just a man in a dress. Oh, it's just the Olympics with a man's scrotum hanging out during the Olympics ceremony. Oh, it's just the Last Supper being completely shit on and disrespected and really like put on blast. And if you look at who designed the whole structure of the Olympic ceremony, it was, I believe, a transsexual or homosexual himself that wanted to infuse their sexual preference into the opening ceremony of the Olympics. See, I think where we've gone wrong as a society is if you want to be transsexual, if you want to be gay, go for it. It's fine. But don't make me tell you that you're a dog or a cat or that your sexual preference needs to be something that myself and my family discusses at our dinner table. I don't stand on a table and say, I had sex with my wife. Y'all need to respect me. I don't do that, right? But on the other side, this whole agenda of really perverted energy wants people that relate heterosexually to not just talk about their life as being normal, but to praise them and to give them special attention for their sexual preferences. I think what we get to do is take the conversation of sexual preference off the table in movies, at family dinner tables, on toys. There's been so much of this co-opting when it comes to sexual preferencing and publicly voicing your sexual preference that we've lost our way. We've lost our way where, hey, when has it ever been okay at a dinner table to say, I like having sex with men. I like having sex with women. There's certain times and places in private to have those conversations, not in public discourse. What I'm saying is I think we've really lost our way. And I think the reason we've lost our way is because the energy that's created by us losing our way is what continues to feed, it's what continues to feed the most extreme aspects of this perversion, of this Wetiko. I think that's really where we're all in a cosmic soup right now.
Do you think that this last presidential election and I guess the congressional elections as well, do you think that was kind of the writings on the wall that this whole woke agenda has jumped the shark and it's on its way out? Do you see that it's losing some steam? I mean, it does seem like the left missed the mark on what most Americans care about. And it's like putting food on the table.
Yeah.
You know, which is a major issue for 70%, 75% of the people. And they kept pushing that, obviously not anybody but Donald Trump. He's a this, he's a that. And all this ideology that, like, a lot of people have a problem with, as you were saying, the 10-year-old cutting off his penis because he feels, you know, doesn't feel like maybe he likes boys and he's just gay. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, don't like, but it has seeped into, unfortunately, the collective consciousness, this idea that that's okay. Or in many people's minds, or maybe not that many people, but it's been stuffed, kind of down our throats for a while now. And I think for a while, no one was able to felt like they could say anything about it either.
Yeah.
And then some clinics started to shut down because the doctors, I think it was in the UK in particular, they're like, we have a real fucking problem with what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on?
Because these people become adults and then sue them for child abuse later.
Yeah. And so my hope is that we get back to some sort of normalizing, as you said, the family unit, Maha, make America healthy again. I mean, who knows what Bobby Kennedy Jr. is going to be able to do. Yeah. I know he's going to try his damnedest.
Yeah.
Potentially could be amazing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us are hopeful for that. I hope everyone across the board is hopeful for what his intentions are. I mean, there is a lot of corruption in obviously many areas of the government, but in particular with our health and the stuff that we're being fed right now. I had heard you talk about Whole30. I didn't know that they had come out and endorsed seed oils.
You know what visual I was seeing when you were speaking about RFK? There was this picture, and I'm sure you saw it because it went viral. It was the previous health secretary.
Yeah, I posted it too.
It was Bobby Kennedy like flexing. And so with my comment, I'm not here to make fun of transsexual people. I'm not here to disrespect transsexual people. What I am saying is that the reality, the objective reality, not subjective, but the objective reality of someone who he himself was struggling with a mental health disorder, being the minister of health, is a sure sign that we've lost our way. Not only was this person confused about, it was a man with a penis wearing a dress and a uniform, pretending to be a woman, but this person was also obese himself. So we have two major moral issues here that as a country, we would allow any type of leadership to put that type of a person in public authority over the category of health. That would be like taking a chain smoker who's 400 pounds and saying, hey, you're going to lead the cardiology program for doctors.
Yes. Yes.
It literally makes no sense in any world, yet we allowed it to happen. So I think that nausea, the collective nausea that we've all been feeling about Washington's policies and putting these disgusting woke figureheads in positions that they represent the exact opposite of, is what we've all been purging ever since Trump got the nod. I think we've all been purging like, God, I can't believe we believed that. I can't believe we allowed that to happen. I'm really excited about what other things we're going to purge, right? Like demonic agenda in Hollywood, like gender dysphoria, like clinics closing down. I think it all stems from the top. Like a family is only as great as a leadership of that family, right? The apple doesn't fall far from a tree for a reason. I know that's an old adage, but it's true. Like if a father and mother really do the work on themselves and love themselves and it's sacred and they teach their children what love is and they teach their children about being sacred in their life, then those children are going to raise their children to do the same. But if you think of America as a huge family and we're all connected, the fact that we would let sick people lead us in the category of health is beyond comprehension as to how we even got there in the first place.
Again,
so I think RFK is going to course correct.
Right?
Plain sight. The emperor's not wearing any clothes.
Right.
He's naked.
He's got a penis.
That story existed for a reason. The emperor is naked and everyone's pretending that he's wearing clothes. Yeah. I think that's where we are, man. Yeah. I think we're like, okay, the emperor's naked.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. He's naked. Now where do we go from here?
Yes.
What do we do now? So I'm hopeful. I don't know because there's billions of dollars in pharma. One good thing is that Lunchables were removed from schools. I don't know if you heard about that.
I did hear that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Lunchables had carcinogenic chemicals that were found in them, like lead was found in Lunchables. So parents spoke their voice and then Lunchables were removed from schools. Change can be that easy when we all come together. But we've all got to come together and stop allowing ourselves to be weaponized by self-righteousness, essentially.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how big pharma, big food, how much they're able to curb the work that, RFK Jr. and others want to do.
I mean, the financial interests are so severe, right? We're talking money that people can't even think of. Like to really conceptualize $1 billion, when you put $1 billion in front of someone, to the degree they're mature or spiritually sound, I don't know what they would do with it. I don't know. If somebody dropped $1 billion off of my house and said, we want you to do these things, I could sit here and say I wouldn't do them.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I don't know how I'd be.
Yeah. I've had this notion that like, I don't care for Washington. I don't care for any of that stuff. I think it's all a bunch of bullshit. Who knows what the real game is? Yep. And given the same path as those that are sitting in there, like, what would I have done? I don't know what gets them to the level where they're at and they're making this money. And maybe they start off with good intentions. And it's just like this little perception shift, little by little, and it's just like before you know it, you're doing some shit that 10 years ago you couldn't ever imagine you'd be doing.
Yeah.
But it's just to get you a little bit at a time. And how many of these people have gotten caught in any of these honeypot traps, and now they're compromised. And so they're going to be doing the bidding. I got to believe that that's pretty significant because it works. It's what Epstein did. It sounds like to a large degree it's what P. Diddy and the ones above him have been doing there. But I do wonder, it's like, it seems year over year, big pharma has more power, more money, big food, the Black Rocks, they just have more and more influence. And it's like, I just don't know if they're ever going to have less. I feel like they've gotten so big and they continue to feed, with policies from Washington. I don't know if that gets turned around. And for me, that can be a little bit terrifying. Like, what does this look like on this trajectory in 10 years? Sovereignty is a big thing. We haven't had to really go there yet. what does it look like in 5 years? What does it look like in 10 years? I mean, maybe I've got to pay a little more attention to that.
When we start treating other people like we treat our children and ourselves, then we can start learning how to live together. But we're not doing that. So if we can learn how to treat our neighbor, our friend, whoever, like anyone that helps our family, like our nanny, our cleaner, anybody, I'm like, how can I thank you so much for helping us? I'm so grateful that I have this money to give to you. And if we can be like that for each other, instead of the parasitic system that was installed in 1776, that made zip codes and our birth certificates tracking IDs for us to be traded on the stock exchange, which is a whole nother conversation about common law and taxation being theft, and the fact that we are owned as government property and the United States is a corporation. A really great resource for this is Luke Story and Alex Zeck. They know way more than I do. I know you had on Brandon Joe Williams, so you've gone deep into that.
Yeah.
I'm scratching the surface on that.
It's a lot, dude.
It's very deep, but all of it makes perfect sense to me.
Yes.
It all makes perfect sense.
Well, and then that begets other conversations that we can have another time.
Yes.
But they're not fully vetted for me yet. But
no, not fully vetted.
I've been down some rabbit holes lately.
Yeah. But it's all the same. So you asked, you asked, what do we do about that? And I feel like I'm asking the same question to you and to all of us, which is, how do we honor women and children at the center? Because if we do that, that's the key to everything. Look at every civilization. Look at the Native American cultures that put women and children at the center, not because it's this old school patriarchal structure where women are owned like property. I'm saying when we honor the fact that life comes through women and we feed our woman with our thoughts and our love and everything we have. I love providing, dude. Earlier you talked about providing and scarcity. Providing is I love it. I love to provide, not because I have to, but it just feels so good as a man to provide. Is it my ultimate value and worth? No. When I'm providing, does it feel good? Yes. I like to do things that feel good, right? Pleasure versus pain. So I think what we do is we take stock of every single person that we come in contact with that serves our family, and we teach them by example, dude. It's by example that we all learn. The same way that children learn by example, we have to grow up as adults because we're all children in adults' bodies when it comes to government and taxation. We're all trying to say, oh, mommy, daddy, IRS, don't hurt me. You know, government, don't hurt me. I'll be good. I'll be good. But it's all just this system built on resentment. There's a deep thread of resentment with government, with authority, with everything, because none of these structures treat us as we want to be treated. And that's where the core disconnect really is with all of this control mechanism that we're experiencing that is coming to light. And I really feel, Cal, in our lifetimes, we will see the unraveling of this system. I do believe it. Will it be something we didn't even know was possible? I think it will be. Look at how fast crypto is exploding. Look at AI. Technology is riding a wave for us of awareness that is so intense and so severe. Once something becomes like the ocean, where you can't control the ocean, you just go along for the ride. I think that's AI and that's crypto and that's a dissolving of all these power structures that are going to completely create a world we didn't even know was possible. I really do. I believe that.
You think that starts in 2025?
Well, I think it's already started, man.
Yeah.
Crypto can't be regulated. It's too deep. JP Morgan Chase and all these people have already gone so deep into it. Even BlackRock and State Street and all these huge firms that run the world, they're all buying crypto. Everybody's buying crypto. Why is that? Why is everyone buying crypto right now and will be in the future because there's only 21 million Bitcoin? It's because it's a medium of exchange that has more honesty. There's more honesty to it. It can't be controlled in the way that dollar bills, physical dollar bills, or regular currency can be controlled. I think it's the wave of the future for a reason, because the future is a representation of the world we all know is possible, where there is no intense evil energy of childhood slavery and childhood sexualization. And we've lost our way for a purpose because we've been in the gutter for a while. And so now it's time to throw another ball and be in the center of the lane. But sometimes it takes a long time to course correct. But I do believe it'll happen in our lifetimes. I feel that.
I'm hopeful.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I am. I mean, it's the world that we want for our children. And so if we teach them well and we put them in the center, and our entire life as men is centered around supporting our family, and growing ourselves, it's not that we ever can't go wrong, but we're not going to stay there for too long. We're eventually going to find the good and the right path. And I think the right path is leading us towards love, just towards respecting each other and loving each other, and not being in victimization in the way that it's been so glorified, with social media being the fuel source for victimization. I think that's really where we are, man. I don't know what's going to happen exactly. I don't know what it's going to look like.
Sure.
It'll probably look like something totally different than whatever we think it's going to be.
Yeah.
So how many times in your life have you been pleasantly surprised by something that you didn't know anything about? I think that's what the future looks like.
Hell yeah. All right. Where can people find you?
Just go on the interwebs. Don't go on the dark web.
Yeah.
Because then I'm sure they have my social security on there or something.
Yeah.
The podcast is Wellness and Wisdom. So y'all can go to wellnessandwisdom.com. And if the conversation about liberation is exciting for you, then there's an early entry point for the Liberated Life tribe. You can go to liberatedlife.com.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about that right now before we close.
So it's a space where you can see your life through this different lens.
Yeah.
Where the old schools of thought, where you're broken and there's something wrong with you, don't exist. And it's a space where you can nourish these 5 sides of yourself, because I believe liberation does not mean that you have it all figured out. I think liberation is the courage and capacity to say no, to learn how to say no to anything or anyone that doesn't align with your soul. And it's a space for people to do that. It's a place where people can learn in public out loud with their peers and get some of this great digestible wisdom that I've received over the past 10 years and 700 plus episodes, and a way to truly give back and be in the learning myself. Yeah. So I think liberation is just the most amazing thing, yet it's confusing for people, because when we hear the word liberation and spirituality, it's an image of like Ram Dass or, Babaji wearing a cape. That's one form of liberation. But I think we can all work on liberation in our lives to become more free, more liberated. That's every part of our conversation today has been about, okay, just how do we get to the truth and be free? So it's a space to do that.
And it's online. Is there in person?
It's online. I just had my first team retreat, which was amazing this year.
Yeah.
Next year, there'll be a retreat for maybe 5 to 10 people, probably less than 10, at my space on my land in Austin, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But it really starts with connecting where we mostly are, which is online, and then getting people online to offline so they can be more in line with themselves.
Oh, look at you.
I just made that up.
I love that.
I've never said that before.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's get offline, y'all, so you can be more in line with yourself.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Dude, thanks for being here.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, man. Love you as a brother.
Love you too.
Yeah.
The past 2 years have been wild, haven't they?
Yes.
You.
Hell yeah.
Makes you think about the next 2 years. Probably be pretty wild too.
I think so.
Yeah.